Thanks, everybody. We're at the top of the hour. So happy to have you here. We'll get started to keep us on time. I'm going to share my screen and we'll just jump in right away. Excuse me. And over here. Well, thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate having you here today. Jamie, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks again, everybody. I'm Leslie Burkus. I'm Executive Director at the Society of Municipal Arborists. We're so happy to have you here today. This is our monthly learning series where we get to hear from people within our network doing great stuff and hearing how they're making urban forestry stuff happen in their communities and hopefully giving you a few things that you could take back to your community and really implement where you are. So I'm going to jump into our slides here. I'm going to start with a quick introduction about SMA, Society of Municipal Arborists. Then we'll jump into the presentation from Jamie King with Virginia Tech, and he's really going to focus on the missing rung in the urban forestry career ladder and why it's a problem, how you can help create more opportunities for workforce development, opportunities for people within urban forestry, and then addressing some of those persistent challenges at entry-level positions. Jamie and I were just at the International Society of Arboriculture conference last week, and this was coming up a lot. People wondering about how we get more people interested in this work. Overall, across the country, in the US at least, and I'm sure in other places, we're having workforce shortage across lots of industries. How could urban forestry be really cognizant and maybe help avoid some of those things that are plaguing us from workforce development? Jamie will touch on that, and then we'll go into Q&A. So a few notes about today. Drop your name and where you're from in the chat. It's so great to see where everybody's from. So let's hear where you're located, and again, your name. And hopefully you'll start connecting with people across the globe. This webinar is being recorded, and ISA CEUs will be submitted on your behalf. At the end of this presentation, I will drop a form into the chat so that you can enter in your CEU information, and then I will submit that for you. Sometimes I forget to chat that. I'll try not to. I've got it all queued up and ready to go, but if I do, don't hesitate to ping me and I'll get that in the chat for you all. And then you all are on mute, so we'll have you kept muted for now. And then at the end during Q&A, we'll take you off mute and allow cameras if you'd like to come off, or you can drop some questions in the chat. And just feel free to put questions in the chat as we go too. Okay, about SMA. Hopefully you're a member. If you are, thank you so much. If you aren't, hopefully you'll consider joining us because we're here to help you to build your confidence, competence, and camaraderie of you as a professional as you manage trees and forests to create more sustainable and livable communities. So that is our mission, and it's kind of a mouthful, but what that really means is we want to be the professional membership home for the people who make and support daily tree planting and care decisions in communities. So if you're located somewhere and you are every day, that's your job, you go and you make some sort of tree planting or care decision, and you want someone to help you make those or help feel supported, that's what SMA is here for. We were founded in 1964 and we are a 501c6 membership-based organization. That's just tax language for nonprofits in the US at least, but it does mean that we're a membership-based organization. We are international, and that's really in large part to that next bullet point because we are a professional affiliate of the society. Oh, sorry, that's us, the International Society of Arboriculture, ISA. So we work really closely with ISA on credentialing, bringing more people into this work, and that's how we're able to offer international membership. And we're also a partner in community forestry with the Arbor Day Foundation, Alliance for Community Trees, and the Urban Wood Network. All this to say that we understand that each one of these groups, along with the U.S. Forest Service here in the U.S., partners in Canada, we all are playing a part to really get more trees in the ground and cared for. And we each are trying to help support you every day in the work you're doing because it can be tough work. I've been in your shoes helping make those daily tree planting decisions. And some days are really hard, but we know a lot of days are really great too. So SMA is able to offer lots of things to our members and a few to non-members. So some of you are probably familiar with our City Trees publication. You see the image of our latest cover here. This is our industry publication that's open source to anybody at this point. It was a member benefit, and about a year ago, this was open to all. And it's just a wonderful mix of technical information along with personal interests, stories, and just hearing more about the people doing this work. So if you aren't subscribed to that, you can go to our website and make sure you get on the list, and we will make sure you're getting that. It's really wonderful to share with your constituents or plus to read for yourself. And if you can't tell, I'm very proud of our publication. We have an awesome editor who makes it so good every single issue. So please subscribe to that. I will go through a few of our other opportunities. Our Arborist Exchange program is a members only benefit. This provides up to $2,000 for you to exchange with another site and learn all about urban forestry or their work on the ground. Next applications will be accepted November 30th. And it's a great opportunity again to have your airfare, your lodging, and your food paid for while you go and you learn A to Z about how people are doing urban forestry in other locations. We have somebody going to be exchanging from DC to Malmo, Sweden, and we're working on another one from Ohio to Providence. So you can kind of see we do international and national US based exchanges as well. Every year, SMA holds an annual conference, and it's a great you know how conferences are. They're so great for energizing and learning information, plus all those side conversations as well, where you really kind of get to hear the nitty gritty from people. This year's a little bit different. We are interweaving our conference with the World Forum on Urban Forests, and that's happening October 16th to the 20th. So I'll drop a link in the chat. Please register for that. We'd really love to see you there. It's coming up here in a few short months, so it'd be great to have you there and see you in Washington, D.C. for the World Forum on Urban Forests. Next year, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled conference in 2024, where we'll have an SMA conference combined with the Partners in Community Forestry Conference. And then our Municipal Forestry Institute, I bet we have a lot of grads on this call. So if you're a graduate, please drop in the chat what year you graduated Municipal Forestry Institute, or MFI as we often go by. And this is helping you grow as an urban forestry leader. And it's beyond the technical arboriculture knowledge. So it's not proper planting, proper pruning, the latest on insect and diseases. This is how you can lead from your position, understanding the context within which you work, budget, political, population, geographic, thinking about where you are and how you can combine your leadership style along with the things that you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And then actually leading change. We know that urban forestry can be number 56 on the list of things in a community, and that can be tough sometimes. So how do you lead from that position and say, hey, how can I have an and conversation with you and get more of my work done, our work done that's really helping our community? And one of the biggest things we hear from people is a network they form at MFI. You'll have this kind of intense bonding experience with others doing your work, and they'll lead to lifelong bonds and connections with people. So it's a great way to be with the people who know and understand you. And registration's open now. You can see where we're going to hold it. Beautiful Jekyll Island, Georgia. It's going to be a beautiful location, February 25th to March 1st. This is a very intensive learning, and so you'll want to walk out the door and go on that beach, I'm sure. But we will have a lot of time in the classroom, but we'll offer a lot of opportunity to be outside too. So hopefully you can join us. Registration is open now. You can go apply. It's open through November 1st, and then we'll notify people of acceptance by December 1st at the latest. Our next learning series will be held September 19th. This is open to all, and it's at noon Central on September 19th, where Mike DeMarco from Waterton, New York, will talk about maximizing urban forestry in smaller communities. Waterton, New York is 25,000 people. So many of our urban forestry programs are coming from smaller communities, and it's some unique challenges where you don't have enough budget, enough staff to do in-house work, and so you're contracting out or you're relying on nonprofit partners. And Waterton, New York's a really good example of that. So Michael will talk about that, and you can sign up for that now. I'll drop that in the chat as well. Registration is open. That was a quick crash course on SMA. So happy again to have you here. Really hope that you're a member of SMA. For those who are, thank you so much. You're who make this possible. Your membership dues make this learning series possible. They make all of those programs that I talked about possible. Your membership dues help support this network, this global network of people doing the same work you are. And there's power in that. There's real power in an association, and that's why people join. So if you are a member, thank you again. If you're not, hopefully you'll consider joining when the time is right. And with that, I'm going to end my presentation, and I'm going to kick it over to Jamie, who will do an introduction for himself. Jamie is with Virginia Tech. And he's also a board member of SMA, so we really appreciate Jamie's time today. Jamie, you ready to go?
Okay, thank you so much, Leslie. um, I guess I have to do are you seeing my screen question? Yeah, are we square?
Yep, can see it.
Okay. Well, hello world. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jamie. I work at Virginia Tech. I also work with SMA and ISA and Mac ISA. And we'll just get right to it. Uh, I think all of us that work in this industry see people aging out, retiring. Maybe the people that brought us into the industry are seeing the ends of their careers or even have already done that. And we see people coming into the industry, maybe sticking with it, maybe not. We see the challenges that we all went through when we were starting our careers in urban forestry. And we see the challenges that the people we work with face every day. And here at Virginia Tech, we have a pretty vested interest in finding out how to support those who do what we do, just like SMA, just like ISA, just like all of our partners. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You see my title there. I'm the Urban Forest Manager and the University Arborist. That's a long title for one person, but that's because it's two hats. I have the pleasure of leading a team of tree workers and arborists who care for the trees here at Virginia Tech. But also I work with partners across the community as a forest manager, planning and doing all the things necessary to make sure that those trees that are being cared for have a track into the future that we can provide for the future. On this first screen, you'll see some of the people that we've worked with over the years. On the left of the screen, that's Ben Heskett. He's a Marine. He did his undergraduate study at some other college and came to Virginia Tech to pursue a graduate degree. And he wanted to work with us for the summer to get his feet wet in arboriculture. He'd been doing tree work, as he called it, but he wanted to learn about the science and craft of doing that well. And then in the middle there, several interns learning from Mr. Rob Springer. Those of us in the tree care industry have probably heard the name. Living legend, Rob Springer. He's retiring now, but we were lucky enough to do a chainsaw training with him this summer. And then on the right there, that's Grace Steger working with Dr. Chris Fields Johnson, learning how to use the tomograph. We're using that tool to understand what's going on inside that tree and find out how we better manage it. All right, so we're going to talk about VT's urban forest, kind of set the stage for what we do here. We're going to talk about workforce development, kind of go over some of the research in the past few years to find out what is this profession facing here in the past, now, in the future, and how we may be involved in that. I've got a few case studies with interns that work with us. So we can kind of hear from their point of view what they're looking for, what they've experienced, what did they take away from what we're able to offer them here, and how can we do it better. And then I'll conclude and spoiler alert, I think we all have a role in workforce development. We can't just rely on the private sector to create tree workers and arborists who maybe one day will become an urban forester. I think that system is good, and we'll talk about that, but how could we all work together to make it more robust, more reliable, and provide the people to care for trees in the future, just as we're planting trees for the future. So here at Virginia Tech, it's very much like a city. I usually call it a large town or a small city. We've got street trees, we've got landscape trees, we've got specimen, we've got an old growth forest here on campus. It's a very diverse, but just like urban forests, it's not quite equitable. We've got 11,500 trees inventoried. Many of those are landscape trees, street trees, but also we've got, I don't know if y'all can see my cursor, got an old growth forest here with 1,700 trees inside it. Got an old golf course out here. Large park-like settings is how we can compare it to other urban environments. And then the population here on campus, 37,000 students and 13,000 employees. Again, very much like a large town or a small city. And then where are those trees? Where's our canopy? We've got data from a partnership with Dr. Eric Wiseman and the College of Natural Resources and Environment, where urban forestry students were able to take iTree canopy and we broke the campus down into districts, and we were able to compare the urban tree canopy in those districts with plantable space and impervious surface. So we know where we're doing well, which would be the meadow over here and the ag belt and Oak Lane, lots of trees out there. But then athletics, the athletic district is very gray, very hot, very dry. And this is how we do it. So this is what I call integrated and adaptive urban forest management. And adaptive management, we're probably all familiar with, but we made sure to include integrated in our concept, in our management strategy, because here at the university, and I think across many urban forestry programs, we have the opportunity to work with people, be it citizen scientists or partners in other industries. Everybody here has a say and can be involved to the degree that they're able and willing. And the integrated part has a large part to do with our internship program. So students can come in and not feel like they're simply labor, but also feel like they're part of something. You know, feel like the work they do contributes to what's happening here on campus and how that supports our community. So who is part of this system? So over here is Mr. Kenny Harmon. He's our field arborist. He leads operations. And then David Wyatt here, he's a tree worker, probably going to be a certified arborist by the end of the year. And Mr. Joe Atkins, he's a training tree worker, still in a groundy position, but developing very quickly, and a really wonderful equipment operator. And then we've got a ton of our interns. So these are some of them from the past. Participating in the various activities that we do. So we do arboriculture, but also we do quite a lot of urban forest assessment and planning, and they get their hands involved in all of those different projects. All right, so let's talk about workforce development. And over the past 5 years, and I have to be careful here, I think I saw on the roster Dr. Keith O'Hare, and he's the lead researcher on the Urban Forestry 2020 project. So I won't get into the nitty gritty of it, but Urban Forestry 2020 was a large research project with partners all across the US, maybe even Canada. And they assessed the profession of urban forestry and the industry to find out essentially where is it going. And through that, several papers have been published. There's several infographics on their landing page. If you just Google Urban Forestry 2020, you'll find all that data. And in that, they've identified, who's involved in the industry, where is it going, what's the current status. Most importantly, in workforce development is that career ladder, and then recommended some strategies moving forward. So there's one of those infographics there. Entry-level positions are only 7% of those found in the studies. And is that enough? Is that a pipeline to providing the urban forestry professionals that the world needs to manage trees into the future? Is it? Here's another graphic from those papers. It shows, the missing rung entry-level positions as being broken. There's a non-supervisory position above that, and then supervisory. And then probably it's pretty unique to our industry is the ability to have experience in lieu of a degree, which I think deserves some discussion. We can learn about trees in the classroom. We can learn about management. We can learn about forestry. We can learn about ecology. We can learn about project management. We can learn all of these different specialties that urban forestry requires. But in the field, you actually learn how to do those things. And most importantly, I think you learn how to compromise. In many cases in the work that I do, we may specify a tree protection zone, but in reality, we have to, hem it in on certain sides and on the edges to allow the other activities going on around it. I think that's a pretty good analogy of something you learn in practice, from top down, from the balcony. We can see urban forestry management, but if we're not familiar with the practices that tree workers and arborists are doing in the field, can we really help them make the best decisions every day? So 7% of positions are entry level, about. Um, and arboriculture employs most graduates out of school. Typically, when I'm talking to people here at Virginia Tech involved in the urban forestry program, they may be a wildlife major, they may be a natural resources and environment major, they may be a traditional forestry major. And I let them know, kind of tongue in cheek, well, you may not know you'll be working in arboriculture, but you probably will. As you start to see how competitive the wildlife sector is, you may find yourself looking for opportunities where you can apply the specialties you learned in school, like tree identification and the concepts of arboriculture and urban forestry, and apply them every day and get paid. And many people do take that route. But something that's posed by the paper, one of the papers, I guess it's the one cited there, is, do all candidates to be an urban forester want to practice arboriculture? Are they able to? Is that really a sustainable model for preparing future urban foresters for the future? And then how does our reliance on arboriculture as an entry level position or as a path into urban forestry, how does that influence diversity and inclusion? I think we probably all know that this industry can be not particularly diverse and not particularly inclusive. And how might that affect recruitment over the next how many decades? We're talking about trees that can live hundreds of years. How adaptable can we be in workforce development to make sure that we're understanding the communities and representing them every single day? And so here's a chance to get involved. The first poll, I think Leslie's still tuned in to help us put the poll up. And here's a question: did you begin your career as a practicing arborist? I'll give us a few moments to see how that works out.
Looks like it's
Interesting. Yeah. So we're pretty heavily on the no side right now.
Mhm.
Wonderful. Glad we did that. And it looks like it's leveled out. Okay, no, it's still changing. All right, so 2/3 no, 1/3 yes.
I'm going to close the poll now, Jamie.
Great, thank you. And my screen sharing again.
Yep.
All right, so ISA thinks that most folks enter the urban forestry industry through practicing arboriculture. Indeed, this is a graphic from their website that shows the different career paths in the industries. And I've circled here entry, and they're kind of assuming that all people involved in urban forestry kind of start out here or here. The entry is simply to become a government urban forester. Okay. Or here, an arboretum or a park or a garden arborist. I guess they weren't able to kind of show where those people are being recruited from. And I think that large gray area here is what was identified in the research. It's essentially, where are these people coming from? In reality, we often find people across the industry who may have come over from landscape architecture, who may have come over from public urban planning, people with an interest in ecology and certain specialties that bring something to the table in urban forestry, but don't necessarily have this same career path identified by ISA. And in that same study, in Urban Forestry 2020, they tried to visualize how many people and what sectors are working in urban forestry. So about 74% of the positions analyzed in that study were public sector. I think what we've seen in recent years is that the nonprofit sector is growing, and rightly so. Their community forestry is a large part of what we do, and oftentimes where government doesn't serve, communities come together to meet those needs. And positions in the industry oftentimes require 2 years experience, even those entry-level positions, as we call them. So here's the next poll here is what sectors do we all work in? I wonder if this will stand up to the data that we're looking at. Looks like nonprofit and private industry are equally represented, far outpaced by the public sector. Nobody here from utility, and I'll note that Urban Forestry 2020, and I verified this, it intentionally excluded folks working in utility vegetation management. All right, so 58%, thanks. Still doing good on time. So in those studies, they also tried to identify the core skills and knowledge needed to practice urban forestry. So what are hiring managers looking for when they're hiring entry-level urban foresters? And largely that's based on skills related to tree care, arboriculture, and tree management. So the ISA certified arborist credential was an important, indication that somebody has the core competencies to manage trees in urban environments. A commercial pesticide applicator, commercial driver's license, those are what I would call operational experience. Generally, and I believe in public sector urban forestry, we often have operations moving on. In fact, in a previous life as a city arborist, I'd be working with program managers, and they would talk about how we didn't have projects, we had operations. Well, in reality, we run daily operations to plant, care for, remove trees all across places. But also we do quite a lot of project management, planning, all of those different things. And then the ISA municipal specialist credential was valued pretty highly. But those below that, I'll say there was an anomaly in that data that I'm not quite sure if Keith's still on the call when we have questions after. Maybe he can give us some insight into the value of the Ecological Society of America's certified ecologist. That was almost of equal value to the ISA municipal specialist, but all of those outpaced any other competing credentials in the study. So formal education was seen as a plus, but often not required to be an urban forester. And here, this isn't a poll, this is just something to ponder, is what do these specialties bring to your team? When you're working with your team, the people you work with regularly, what does operational experience bring as you decide on how to manage your community's trees? What do the core competencies involved in ISA's credentialing systems bring to the people that you work with every day? So moving away from that academic research, we can talk about a summit that was held in 2018 by ISA and several industry partners. So people came from across all sectors involved in arboriculture and urban forestry, utility sector as well, to identify the key challenges. And I stole this graphic from their final report from that summit. And they identified 6 places to focus on in the coming years to help support recruiting and retaining professionals in the industry. And largely those involve people. I've circled a few here that I think are pretty important. Public-private partnerships. We can't do all of this alone. The internship we do here at Virginia Tech is in close intimacy with our private partners. Bartlett Tree Experts helps host our chainsaw training and various other opportunities to help us prepare people to work in this industry. But also we're working with people all across the nonprofit industry to expose these interns to opportunities to the industry as a whole, and make sure that they understand it's not just what we do here, but what you can learn and then apply elsewhere. Diversity and inclusion is how can all of us in this industry, as we attract people to try to do what we do, even though sometimes it's not fun, how can we make them feel more comfortable and part of the team? How can we be more inclusive? And lastly, is should the private sector train urban foresters? Right now, the research has shown us that the entry level into urban forestry is oftentimes represented by private sector tree care. Is that the best way? Is that the right way? Is that how we should be training future urban foresters? Or is that part of how we're not particularly being invited? So I think a leader in the industry, Mrs. Bridget Orick, she's the lead recruiter for Davy Resource Group, or I guess Davy. They've got several companies. And in 2019, she presented at the MAC ISA annual meeting about the landscape of recruitment and retention of tree workers and arborists. And that's where I kind of came to realize how much Davy, Bartlett, Save a Tree, some of the big tree care companies in the U.S., how much they invest in taking what we call greenhorns, recent graduates, people entering the industry, and turning them into tree workers, arborists, and people who maybe want to be urban foresters. And so they specialize in that. And then just recently at the conference in New Mexico, the ISA conference, I heard the same thing in Canada, in British Columbia. Oftentimes, the private sector is training people into tree workers and arborists, and then those individuals get a few credentials and move into the public sector, which pays better and is a little more secure as people age and want to start families. So is that right? The private sector has to do that because they have turnover. The work of a climbing arborist is tough, and a lot of people get burned out by their 30s or especially late 30s. And sometimes those people find themselves remaining in private sector doing sales, doing consulting work, but oftentimes they'll move into public sector where the work is a little less rigorous. And some of them, the brightest of them, maybe even become urban foresters after that. Is that the path? Is that historically what we've noticed? That's an interesting question, and I think the research hasn't quite covered yet. So some of her advice was here in this graphic is recognizing that when we bring people onto our teams, when we work with people, when we mentor them, this is the very beginning. We've got to understand what they want. It's not just that they're here to work. It's not that they're here to provide the service. I think it's important, especially on our team, is to check in regularly and say, what's extra interesting about what we've done in the past quarter? Are you developing an interest in pathology? Maybe we can tailor your job tasks, tailor some of your training to meet those specialties that you're starting to develop. Because in my mind, oftentimes we develop specialties over our careers. And if we can do that in an active way instead of passively, we may be able to develop professionals quicker, maybe better. So my argument is that the public sector and nonprofits can do that work too. Through what we do at BT is through partnership with the private sector, but maybe there's other creative ways to do that too. Outreach and recruitment go hand in hand. So when I'm speaking to students at the university, when leading a tree tour for, believe it or not, a Spanish class, I'll let them know. This summer we've got jobs coming up, and we'd love to meet you and see what you may be able to learn with us. And we have recruited through those opportunities, and sometimes those interns will outpace and outperform, in my mind, even some of those that are already in the urban forestry major. And most importantly, is we can design the future employees that we want to have, through creating a training experience, through creating an outreach and recruitment system. We can actually, take people who may not know that they want to be involved in this industry and show it to them, help them develop those specialties we talked about, and then have a larger pool of better qualified people to do this work. And why? Well, because what we do is work. All right, so now we're going to talk about the academy. And in doing that, I had some interns that are with us now and some interns that were with us in the past record some short videos about their experience. And I'd like to kind of take each one as a case study. Each one's about 3 minutes long. It looks like we do have time, which is great. I was able to get through the red meat there and then leave time for you to hear from somebody other than me. So I'm going to play the videos, and after each video, I'll talk a little bit and about each of these people's experience and what we were able to learn together. And if the video or the audio is not working, Leslie, please let me know.
The audio is not sharing, Jamie, so I think you need to change that on the sharing.
Earlier, it gave me an option to. Well, just a moment, folks. I'll figure it out.
You might need to stop sharing, and then when you hit share again, you can turn on that little tab that says include computer sound.
Good idea. All right, I think it's going to work this time, folks.
Hello, my name is Jacob Hardaway. I am a class of 22 graduate of Virginia Tech. I participated with Jamie King's academy from March of 2022 through December of 2022. After graduating with a Bachelor's of Science in Urban Forestry. Working with Jamie King has been a part of my path by providing a foundation for me to apply my skills that I learned in class with my hands, doing tree waterings, tree health monitoring, pruning, stuff like that. Really help provide foundational skills that I'm now applying at my new full-time job here in San Francisco. During my time at Virginia Tech, I did some summer internships, some work with Dr. Eric Wiseman, doing some research after my graduation, and the academy with Jamie King. After I finished up with Jamie King, I moved here to San Francisco in May of 2023, where I had started a arborist plant healthcare position with Bartlett Tree Experts. This internship did help me bridge between studying and finding a job, because this industry does not have very good entry-level jobs. Because of Jamie's internship, I was able to get a little bit better pay and something using my mind a little more rather than my body, which I definitely appreciate. Another issue being a little bit low pay for a fresh graduate with loans coming up. It was a little disheartening. Made me apprehensive for entering the field. There's a raw look at the industry. what you can expect from it. There were good mentors around. I particularly appreciated Jamie's input. Kenny Harmon was a strong figure as well. There was other faculty on campus, such as Dr. Wiseman. There's a good learning environment. It was pretty forgiving. There weren't huge consequences if a small mistake was made. And as long as you were honest with Jamie about it, he would tell you how to improve in the future. It also gave me enough time to connect with other mentors on campus, like Dr. Eric Wiseman, who I did some postgraduate, well, just some research with Dr. Wiseman up in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so what I take away from Jake's video is how many times he said people's names and full names. I think that's because we make an impact on these people. You know, when you take the time to invest in someone. I know I remember that from when I was Jake's age and younger. Is I think about it all the time when people would recognize something in me and take my hand and help me through whatever I was working through. It's as though they those of us as adults and older adults or people just a little further along in our career, we can see ourselves in these people, can't we? And we can actually, give them the space, give them the tools, give them the opportunities to be successful. And again, I keep saying it, develop specialties. Um, and then, Jake mentioned, the lack of entry level positions. I've asked everybody, all of these folks we have testimonials from, if I can share their stories, and they all agreed. He's applying to other jobs, tree inspector jobs in San Francisco, and in the meantime, he's developing all of these technical skills with Bartlett. And maybe the internship he had here, the work he did with Eric Wiseman, he did an internship in the utility sector before that. Maybe all of that will culminate in the next short while into an entry level position with an agency he wants to work with, or maybe he stays with Bartlett. The world's his oyster. We'll see what Jake does in the next few years.
Hello.
All right, so this is Allie Presby. She's been working with us this summer. She's an urban forestry major, just like Jake, and she has a keen interest in entomology. So let's see what she has to say.
My name's Allie Presby. I'm a rising senior here at Tech with the Urban Forestry program. I'm also studying wildlife. My name's Allie Presby. I'm a rising senior here at Tech with the Urban Forestry program. I'm also studying wildlife and entomology as minors. I started here at this program this summer, so this is my first couple weeks doing this job in a practical sense. And I got in through the program through learning about it from some of my teachers, as well as working with Jamie from a couple classes. So it was really interesting to kind of branch out more and find this program. I've mainly been working with the tree crew and learning about watering and good upkeep for urban forests, like stewardship and maintenance, mainly working with, like I said, the crew, doing a lot of practical work with dragging brush and just helping with some of the bigger things when people are working with the chainsaws and stuff. So just kind of being a helping hand, kind of in the background, but just to make sure and keep things running smoothly. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is just more practical experience. This has really helped me learn a lot more about the trade. Because taking a couple classes, learning about it is definitely not the same as actually being there in the moment, hands-on, working with trees and all the different situations that arise with different maintenance needs. At least for me, one of the biggest struggles with the program is just how male-dominated a lot of the workforces, just in general. I know one of our biggest issues for me and the other women on the crew is like finding gear that fits. Like you probably see that this vest is really big on me and the helmets don't fit right. So I think having industry overall, more inclusivity, but I think the program that I'm in right now does a really awesome job of being really inclusive and accepting as well as accommodating for a lot of different issues, which has made it a really great introduction into like a professional job, and it has made me realize that working in a male-dominated force is not necessarily as scary as I thought it was.
All right. So I saw the comment also provide a bathroom. That's a major part of the first day discussion. Is, please do not feel embarrassed or like you're putting out the team. If you have to go to the bathroom, just go. Now here on campus, that's easier than other job sites. There's open buildings with restrooms within walking distance of every job site. So just as we have to work extra hard to make sure we get gloves that fit everybody that we work with. Also, I want to go on the record is after I heard that her helmet wasn't fitting right, we made sure it was adjusted properly. We got to have that talk and say, whatever you need, we'll provide it for you. It just takes a little extra effort to make sure somebody feels like they're part of the team. So that's one of the major takeaways from Allie is it also she has taken a lot of interest in learning these practical skills. Some folks come onto the team and we may split their time between watering and data collection and job shadowing, but she really wants to be out there with the team every day, even if the chainsaw doesn't fit her hand like it should. It seems like there's quite a lot of money to be made if somebody would design a chainsaw that fits everybody's hand. So here's Jackson. Jackson worked with us for a long time, and he is now in Norway pursuing a master's in wildlife. And he was our very first intern. So in 2020, he was looking for a summer opportunity. He was a wildlife major, and essentially everything was canceled. And a professor we work with really closely said, "Well, you need to call Jamie's team. Maybe they can find a place for you." And he kind of set the tone for what we're able to do here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jackson Helling. I'm originally from Maryland, and I was at Virginia Tech for a Bachelor of Science in Wildlife Conservation and a minor in Forestry. And after that, I did a one-year Master of Forestry under Dr. Seiler. And now I'm here in Norway at Norwegian University of Life Sciences doing a Master of Science in Ecology. I was able to come on as the first intern, I believe, at Virginia Tech for the arborist position. So I got to go around and identify, catalog the trees. I watered them using the big 350-gallon tank and driving a truck. And then I also help train new interns and do other projects, especially in Stadium Woods. So I think the big takeaways for me were seeing the balance of dealing with other people and how to cooperate with other professions and other ways of looking at trees in the world, and then the actual technical aspects of what is the best thing for this tree in this patch of forest. How do we manage it properly? How do we make sure that the trees are in balance and that they're growing well? Proper pruning, which trees are planted, which places. So all of those kinds of things with the overhead management and then on the ground actually how to implement these things. Challenges that we're currently facing in forestry and urban forestry, arboriculture, any of these things, is many people really don't value trees. They'll just see them as these green sticks and that they're many times just an obstacle in the way of building new things, new construction, taller buildings, more lawns that they can cut the grass on and not really use. So I think it's a lot of the social aspects are the toughest things, where people think that a very short lawn of just grass is the best thing, even though it doesn't offer much for wildlife or for stormwater control. There's no shade, of course. So having at least even just a few trees interspersed in that makes a huge difference. So I think the main issue is.
All right, moving on to the next one because we are a little short on time. What I remember about Jackson's experience is you may have heard him talk about the huge 300-gallon water truck like he was incredibly intimidated by that. And we worked through that. I gave him some training. We went out together. He built some confidence. And later, when he moved on to do his master's here at VT before moving to Norway, he told me, I thank you so much for challenging me, for asking me to do something that I wasn't already thinking about. And then you probably heard him talking about more philosophical issues with land management. So he didn't quite understand how oftentimes we're compromising. How when he would shadow me on a meeting, how yeah we're working with someone whose priority is the grass, or we're working with someone whose priority is the construction of this new building, and we're here to help them deliver the very best product to the community that we can. And luckily, me and Jackson had very much similar philosophy, and we were able to work through some of that. I think that may better prepare him for his career coming up.
Hi everyone, I'm Jackson Hilling.
So we're gonna go a few more, so we've got time for questions. Here's Madeline.
My name is Madeline, and I got this job working for Jamie through some professors I had at Tech. I study environmental conservation with forestry and an urban forestry minor, and I had asked a professor I needed to work this summer, and he showed me Jamie, and here I am. I love it. I've gotten to try out a few different things, one being the inventory process, basically measuring and identifying and kind of all the details about each specific tree on campus and putting it in its own software. And it's like a giant collection of all the trees here, which I think is pretty interesting. It's the more nitty-gritty, less glamorous side of urban forestry, I'd say, but just as important for different reasons, especially like being on a campus that puts such an emphasis on natural resource management and whatever. I think that's a nice touch to have to it. But working with the crew has been really interesting, seeing how much more goes into even just pruning a tree, which seems so simple, and there's a lot that goes into it. So yeah, that side, the data collection side, and then the crew side is mainly what I've been doing this summer. Positives about this whole program is like how hands-on it is. Obviously this is a very hands-on job, but even just like learning on site, and it's not as much like a class. We're so used to classroom settings where we're just like reading a PowerPoint or reading a textbook, and you know this information but not necessarily how to apply it. But from day one you're out here getting your hands dirty, and I personally learned so much quicker that way. Working with like very relaxed people who both like are incredible at what they do, but also understand that we're new and that we're learning. I think it takes a lot of the edge off of starting a new job that can be pretty daunting. I wouldn't even say there's not much diversity. There's almost zero diversity whatsoever. And I noticed that even just coming to Blacksburg. I grew up in an area, my high school had, I'm pretty sure our population of like black students was 30%, or even more so. And then I come to Blacksburg and there's almost no diversity whatsoever. And then specifically Tech, and then specifically CNRE, you don't see anyone that doesn't look like me. And I think it could be pretty important to try and reach out to other communities that aren't necessarily in this field. I think that could help us a lot. My name is Madeline.
So some of the things I took away from Madeline's testimonial there was she thought that our team was relaxed. That's really encouraging, because oftentimes I think we're living and working in chaos, but it sounds like we're doing okay on that. That's a hell of a compliment. And she pointed out the deficit of diversity among the people we work with. So here at the university, there's simply a small pool of demographics that we can recruit from, and we try our best, but we're not really meeting our goals towards being representative of the entire state of Virginia. So part of our IRA grant this year was to expand the program so we could recruit from other institutions. Lastly, the last testimonial, Grace has been working with us for nearly 3 years. And I'll have to talk quickly about this because we're going to leave room for questions. But she is incredibly brilliant and incredibly dedicated, and she does excellent work. And that led us to kind of put in a little too much work on her. And I think many of us in the industry may feel that when you're good at something and when you do work and provide a good product, that means people ask you to do more. And what I realized is probably the better thing that we can do from learning with her and taking her feedback and meeting her where she is. We can tailor this experience to individuals. Sure, when a person's willing and able to take on those extra tasks, great. But also, remember that they're students too, and they have personal lives, and that this is a development opportunity, not a career yet. So we've adapted that, and that's kind of the final thing here is that we got to meet people where they are. To provide people with the very best opportunities, you got to understand people as individuals. People, just like trees, can be vulnerable at the very beginning of someone's career. It may help to give them a little extra protection like we would a new tree in the landscape. We can introduce them to people outside of their regular box. This is Dr. Jay Stipes, a retired professor. This is Joe, this is Grace, and they were all out there treating a Dutch elm together, or a Dutch elm for Dutch elm disease together. Essentially, the future urban forester was learning a technique developed by Jay Stipes to treat elms that we use internationally. And then there's my son there looking up at trees, and I've got to remind myself if probably the best thing I can do to help him appreciate trees is to ignore them. Give him the space to learn that himself. So here I am. The email is really easy, campusarborist@vt.edu. If you ever have any questions, since we did run out of time a little bit, I could stay late if anybody wants to stay on. I'm here for you. Part of my job is outreach and involving people. So please drop me a note. I'd love to talk. All right. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate it. So I just dropped the ISA CEU form in the chat. You will fill that out with your name, email address, and your cert number, and then SMA will submit on your behalf. We're asking you to submit that by the 24th at noon Central Time. And I'll stay on. We can stay on for a little bit. If you need to leave at the top of the hour, no problem. I am going to head over here and take everybody, allow mics for everybody. So please feel free to come off mute if you have any questions. And Jamie, that was really good. We saw a lot of chat about people appreciating seeing those stories. And I think a lot of the women in the audience really identify with some of that information about ill-fitting clothing, lack of restroom. I spent a lot of time at our public works forestry department here in Des Moines, and it was certainly the case here that there was no female restroom, and the restroom that was there did not feel very comfortable for a female to use. So definitely something that was coming to mind for people. If you've got questions, put them in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. You can come off of mute. But Jamie, I was curious. I think everyone there is a Gen Z, and we're hearing so much about generational change right now. And I know some people, we always say, oh, don't blame generations, but it does feel very different right now. I don't know if you're seeing that or if I'm just projecting onto things of like high turnover rate among Gen Z and within jobs. And I think urban foresters, just got to get the work done. You want to mentor people so badly, but like your job's busy. So I think there's a couple of questions there of maybe what you're seeing that Gen Z, this next generation, is really looking for in their work, and how we can help maybe keep them along a little longer, or how we develop that mindset to say it's okay if they leave.
That's a difficult thing to discuss, right? we all have our expectations. As a hiring manager, I have to have expectations, right? And probably the story about Grace that I wasn't able to get into too deeply is, she needed to take a semester off to do what she needed to do for herself, and that's not something that I would have ever considered when I was a student. So meeting a person where they're at, understanding that this opportunity adds capacity to the program. Their work with the crew adds capacity to what they're capable of doing. Their work on inventory work, their work on reports that I ask them to do, all adds capacity, but it's extra. I the deadline needs to be flexible because they're doing other things. Um, they're they always provide good quality because they're all trying hard to impress people. And making sure that they understand that, making sure that they know that you've already impressed me. You don't have to work extra hard on this. And I'm essentially giving them the space to grow, not just provide a service. Um, it does take an understanding of their position as extra versus production, right? Um, that's my 2 cents on that, and I'm learning all the time, learning how to be understanding, inclusive, um, and I think the root of it is helping them get excited about the industry. Now, the backside of that is when they leave, I'll take somebody out to lunch and I'll say, now it's probably never going to be this fun again.
Oh, that
'Cause,
must be with you.
no, yeah, well, we again, we're trying to make people excited about the industry, and they know it's work, but they also know that it's extra. They're going to have more accountability at their next positions.
Ian, you have your hand up. Feel free to come off of mute.
Thank you. Thank you both for this is great. I've been thinking a lot about this field and someone that's a little bit younger in the industry. I look at other people at my age bracket, people that are trying to get into it, and there's a wonderful effort from leaders in this community to have mentorship. Like they want to provide good information, they want to help with networking. Like that's been the strength of my experience with all of this. But I think the one thing that there's a disconnect that I'm curious about as an open discussion, not necessarily as an answer, is what if there's only 7% of the ladder being filled by entry level? And we have this sentiment, everyone's busy, everyone's strapped on funds. What's the incentive for the other 93% to bring someone in, not just give mentorship? Where's that incentive for them? They help my job on a day-to-day level. So when we're talking about things in Florida and California where they have a second language, it allows them to do their job better. You have a stronger team that can help you with the nuts and bolts. And I think there's a wide range of things, but how can we find incentive not just for external people to apply for these jobs, but internally for people to be have a better working experience by bringing in other types of people, other levels of experience, other experiences, other cultural backgrounds? Where can we create that leverage, because there's money coming in for it, but how do we make people that are there not feel threatened for their own jobs when everyone's pretty strapped right now?
Incentive is the word, right? We have to do it because we have to do it because we care about trees. We have to support those who may care for them in the future. But right now, there doesn't seem to be a structured incentive for those public-private partnerships to create that system. That's a curious question, Ian.
Well, I see some questions from Alex, and we'll wrap up here shortly. Alex mentions that having the interns speak with high school students to help increase interest in the field, especially as it relates to diversity. Is that anything you've explored or thoughts about starting even earlier to get people introduced to this?
We do a lot of outreach here. So we speak to Radford, and Radford is a city nearby. They have a high school. Floyd County is a county nearby. They have a high school. And those students come to campus over usually at the end of their academic summer or semester. And as part of a tour on campus, they visit with us and talk about urban forestry. And I'll usually have students along with me because anytime we can interface with young people, it's nice for them to have someone a little closer to their age to identify with. So we are able to do that. We host a few different summer camps here on campus too that We go talk about dendrochronology and core of tree and talk about simple biology with the young kids. And I have seen that they will respond better to, say, Madeline than they will me, because I look more like their parents. So you're right, Alex, and having first of all, the interns get the experience in outreach and education, but also the young folks in the community get to interface with someone that can relate to a little better.
Mhm. Well, thanks for that, Jamie. I was managing a workforce program in Des Moines at my last job, and it was so rewarding. We were employing high school students to plant and care for trees. We were employing college-age kids to be their supervisors, and there was really great days. But it was hard too, because you're trying to now you're managing people, and a lot of people, and managing people is very challenging. And so all those issues that come up with that, while you're also getting that great work done too. And so I only bring that up here that last, not even time for to discuss that, because I know so many people deal with it. That's a really great reason to come to MFI. And I think something that we need to talk about a little bit more is that management of people. If we want to get more people in the industry, you went to school and got your biology or ecology degree, and you probably weren't taught very many management courses of how to really work and that emotional intelligence you need with people. So something that we for sure need to focus on a little bit more too. And overall, what you discussed today, Jamie, is something SMA really wants to help support. If we want more managers of trees, we want to be helping support that broader picture of it. 4-year degrees, 2-year degrees, apprenticeship programs, internship programs like you're talking about, Jamie. So there's a lot to be done to get more managers of trees. We had some great conversation in the chat about in California, English is not the first language for many tree workers there. So how do we make sure that we're being inclusive to people across the industry? So with that, we are going to wrap. Thanks so much for joining us today. That ISA CEU form is in the chat. I will follow up with an email, and you can respond to me if you need that form another time. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jamie.
Everybody.